Chapter 4, Mishnah 5. This Mishnah discusses a watering trowel, which is a hollowed-out stone that is attached to the ground. A nearby spring flows directly into the trowel through a hole in its side, filling it with water. Animals then drink from it. The discussion pertains to whether it is considered a container with respect to a number of laws, including that of she'uvin in a mikveh. The Mishnah begins by discussing whether such a trowel may be used in the preparation of mechatas, the water used in the purification process of a person or item that became tameh with corpse tumah. In that process, a parah adumah, red cow, is slaughtered and burned, as described in Bamidbar chapter 19. Later, a container is filled with spring water, and the ashes of the burnt parah adumah are mixed into the spring water. This addition of ashes to the water is known as sanctification. It must be performed in a container, Bamidbar chapter 19, verse 17. Finally, 3 branches of hyssop are dipped into the mechatas, and the mechatas is sprinkled on the tameh person or item. See Bamidbar chapter 19, verse 18, and Parah chapter 11, Mishnah 9. When the hyssop is dipped in, the mechatas must be contained in a container, not necessarily the one in which the water was sanctified. We will now turn to the words of the Mishnah. Regarding a trowel carved in a rock attached to the ground, we may not fill it with spring water to use for mechatas, and we may not sanctify mechatas in it, and we may not sprinkle mechatas from it, because these 3 procedures all require a container. Like any receptacle that was carved out of the earth, this trowel is not considered a container. The next law relates to tumas ohel. Normally, a person or item that is in the same covered area as a corpse becomes tameh. Nevertheless, a container that is not itself subject to tumah can protect its contents from becoming tameh through tumas ohel if its cover is sealed. However, if the cover is not sealed, its contents become tameh. A pit in the ground, on the other hand, protects its contents from tumas ohel as long as the pit is covered, even if it is not sealed. See Ohel Los, chapter 5, Mishnah 6. If the trowel is in the same ohel as the corpse, it does not need a sealed cover to protect its contents from tumah. The trowel is regarded as a pit in the ground, which protects its contents from tumas ohel by merely being covered, even if it is not sealed. The Mishnah now addresses whether 3 lugan of water that was in such a trowel disqualifies a mikveh. Water from this trowel does not disqualify a mikveh. Since the trowel carved out of rock is not considered a container, the water it holds is not considered she'uvin, and does not disqualify a mikveh into which it is added. The Mishnah now discusses a trowel that was carved into a rock that was not connected to the ground, and was later connected to the ground. He hollowed it out and later attached it. The Mishnah will address the law with regard to each of the 5 situations discussed earlier. If a trowel was formed as a container unattached to the ground, that is, it was made by carving out a rock that was not connected to the ground. Even if someone later attached it to the ground with plaster, it is subject to the following laws. We may fill it with spring water to use for mechatas, and we may sanctify mechatas in it, and we may sprinkle mechatas from it. In addition, if the trowel is under the same ohel as a corpse, it needs a sealed cover to protect its contents from tumah. Furthermore, 3 lugan of water from the trowel disqualifies a mikveh that contains less than 40 sa of water. Since the trowel had the status of a container before it was attached to the ground, it remains a container even afterward. The Mishnah now teaches the law of a container that has a hole. If it developed a hole on the bottom or on its side, i.e. at the bottom of the wall, so that it cannot hold any water at all, it is valid, i.e. water that enters it does not become she'uvin, because it is no longer considered a container. How large must the hole be for it to no longer be considered a container? The size of a tube of a leather bottle. The Mishnah teaches another law where a hole the size of a tube of a leather bottle plays a role. The case involves a certain trowel in Jerusalem that was known as Yehu's trowel. It was used as a mikveh for immersing utensils. Although it did not hold the required 40 sa, it was valid as a mikveh because its waters were connected, through a hole in its wall, to an adjacent mikveh that did hold 40 sa. Rabbi Yehuda ben Beseira said there was an incident that occurred with Yehu's trowel in Jerusalem that had a hole the size of a tube of a leather bottle between it and the mikveh that was next to it. And all the Torah foods in Jerusalem were prepared into utensils that were purified by being immersed in this trowel, relying on the connection the size of a tube of a water skin between it and the mikveh that was next to it. Beis Shammai sent people, and they broke open the wall between the trowel and the mikveh, so that most of the length of the wall was below water level. For Beis Shammai say it is not valid until most of it has been broken open, i.e., unopening the size of the tube of a leather bottle is not enough to combine 2 bodies of water. Rather, the majority of the wall that divides them must be opened so that the waters mix over a large area.